Feature and a Short.
Welcome to Feature and a Short. Feature and a Short is a monthly screening hosted by 4Win Films, where an appointed contributor presents their chosen feature motion picture and short movie. The only condition for screening a selection, the presenter must have been directly involved with one picture, but not the other. I'm Justin Joseph Hall. Gladys Mae Murphy is our guest, and she works on HBO projects all the time, all of which are amazing. She was co-editor on the Oscar-winning CRISIS HOTLINE, which won the Academy Award for documentary short several years ago. The movie that we watched was another Oscar-nominated film that she worked on with Geof Bartz called Prison Terminal: The Last Days of Private Jack Hall.
So Prison Terminal is a film that was shot over the course of 6 months by a director who wanted to experience what hospice was like in prisons where people are serving life sentences. Edgar Behrens was a director. He got his certificate to be able to, practice as a caretaker. He worked with the prisoners for a week just to get them used to his presence, and then he brought out the camera and just followed everything for 6 months. He lived in the basement across the street. He had a very depressing time, and this movie is very, very depressing, and but it's about a hospice, so I'm sorry if we all know what the ending's gonna be.
So after the film, we had a short discussion, and Gladys had a ton of insight, not only on her process, but also the effort that the director put into creating this film. For those of you who don't know Geof Bartz, he's a very famous documentary editor.
20 years at HBO as a supervising editor, and so when there's a film that it comes into HBO that's already been cut and needs a little help, they give it to Geof. Maybe almost a decade ago, I was hired to be his assistant, and after a year of hardcore assistant work, I escaped to the country Colombia and said I wasn't coming back for 6 months, and he called me. He was like, I need you back. And I was like, I'm not coming back. And I said, I want to cut soon. And he gave me a scene to cut in a different movie that was hard. It was about how they kill dogs in shelters. It was that scene, and I was so excited that I was even allowed to cut for anything for HBO, and so I did it, and he kept me on, and one of our next projects was this Prison Terminal. And we cut it over the winter. We both gained so much weight because it was just so depressing. And we both don't smoke cigarettes, so our outlet was like, oh, let's go to the vending machine. And we did that maybe like 5 times a day, just watching the dailies. And there was one, it was shot on tape, mini DVs, and we would watch just one tape a day, and it was a countdown to Christmas. And he said, oh, this is a tape where Jack Hall dies. Let's not start the Christmas season with this. I was like, great idea. And then so 2013, 2014 rolls in, and the first tape we pop in is to watch Jack Hall die. And it wasn't that hard to cut. It was just hard to watch. And it's still hard to watch. I haven't seen it in years, and it still brings back feelings. So Geof Bartz cut the next film, Pumping Iron, about bodybuilding, and helped Arnold Schwarzenegger become a household name. And I watched that film when I was 18 in California, not knowing I was ever gonna meet anyone from Pumping Iron. And when I walked into Geof Bartz's office, he had a poster of Pumping Iron. I'm like, oh, that's cool. He said, yeah. And because I did not look at his entire history. Yeah. He has like 100 films, and he's like, this is the film I cut. I said, what?
But you'd already seen it.
I've seen it when I was 18, and like a decade later, I meet Geof. And he said after that film came out, there was so much buzz. He was so excited. He was a freelancer. He's like, oh, I'm gonna get the job offers. He got nothing for 7 months. And his first job editing after 7 months of unemployment was editing an industrial film on how to grow green beans. And he said he was so excited, and it was just inspirational. I was like, wow, you did Pumping Iron and no one hired you after that?
Yeah, no, that's cool. The other thing I was wondering is, like, when you got the footage, when you work with Geof, especially on this film, there's like some of the least amount of credits I've seen in a film on that. It's pretty crazy. So what did Geof, if you knew that you were cutting this with him, what was your working relationship, and how do you deal with the footage when you first got it?
When we first got the footage, there was over 300 hours, and we knew it was a short. And we said, weed out everything that isn't related to the Jack Hall, because he did shoot other people in the hospice who weren't as dynamic as Jack. And he gave us maybe 80 hours of tapes to go through. And what Geof likes to do is to have everyone sit in a room and watch all 80 hours.
Everyone?
Me, the director, and Geof. And the director was the only crew member. He was sound, and I don't know if you noticed, but it has this weird tint on it because he never set his white balance. And at one point we're like, oh no, we need to make this film black and white because the color is so bad. But everything's just desaturated on purpose because of his color balance. But he, it was just a one-man band. Like, I was a third credit. I'm like, great. There's parts of Jack's story that doesn't line up with what he says, but I think he's just that old and he's been telling himself the same story over and over that he believes it. Those guys who take care of Jack in the hospice, the reason why they're allowed to be volunteers is because they're in good standing. You know, their bars are usually open and they do a lot of crocheting and they make wallets and stuff. But they did some really bad things. But these guys were maybe like 20 when they did it, and now they're 60. So they've been in prison for a while. I don't think they're ever gonna leave that prison.
Who did Jack murder?
His son was addicted to drugs and ended up killing himself. And so Jack said he murdered the drug dealer so he could no longer do it again. And he got caught because he told his older son that we meet, and his son turned him in. That's how he got caught. And our director, by the end of the 6 months, he had gained, I don't want to say how many pounds, but all he was eating was like pizza and prisoner food, and he's like, I was just waiting for the right person. And he left after Jack left. He said, this one's it. He shot that in 2006, and we didn't cut it until 2013, meaning no one would buy it. No one bought the film. And someone at HBO saw it during one of those speed dating pitches where, like, you have like 3 minutes to explain it to an exec at a network, and how many years later it was bought and turned into 40 minutes.
I was just going to ask, where did the shot actually go? Like, was it...
When HBO tries to get something shortlisted for an Academy Award, it has to be theatrical for a certain amount of time. It has to be reviewed by certain newspapers in order to qualify for the running. And so it was theatrical for, I think, 4 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever the minimum is. But in like small, obscure, cheap theaters.
Yeah.
And it's 40 minutes. It's not like a Saturday movie you're gonna want to take the family to. You know, it was hard to make a film about something that doesn't really benefit like us people who are free, and these people are in prison, and so why would everyone else care about how they treat their dying and the sick? And I think that was the biggest challenge.
You know what the process was like for him in terms of getting access?
He did a film about Angola, or he helped set up a hospice at that prison. And it was more like a how to do this, and it was spread amongst the other prisons. And he wrote a letter to Iowa and said, hey, I did this film and I'd like to film the hospice that you guys have. And they said, that's funny, we based it off of your film. And so he got in, and he studied to become a hospice volunteer, so he was able to help out for a week and gain everyone's trust. So no one was ever like staring at the camera awkwardly. They were just comfortable around him. And these guys are, they're pretty much the honor roll of all the prisoners, and old dudes who have been best friends for decades. He had a lot of like great bites. He was a soundbite machine. The first thing I ever saw was that intro where he's talking about when you just first meet Jack and it's just his big face and he's talking to camera. And that's when I knew. I was like, this is gonna be a good film.
It's so interesting what you said about the color correction, because that bleakness made it,
Yeah.
it really just enhanced that fragility.
That mood and yeah.
So interesting, those mistakes that actually end up being a benefit.
I mean, some of those shots were like, honestly, they were green or orange. And we were like, Edgar, he said, oh, I had it on automatic. But actually, he's one of the best verite shooters I've ever edited with. He's so patient. I mean, to live somewhere for 6 months and just capture all those hours. And he's so patient. He just observes and watches. He's not really like asking anyone, can you walk through the door again? Or I wouldn't be able to know where to move the camera after, but he always knew that once he moved the camera to you guys, and one of you would start talking, and it was just, he's really patient.
Like I said, the fact it looks kind of a bit like he's not done the white balance almost kind of adds to it, because it gives it that like sickly kind of otherworldly vibe, which is kind of what the patients were at the point. I was thinking if it was shot really beautifully and looked like, a $5 million Netflix doc, then it kind of leaves something honest.
Whenever the countdown happens with Hospice Day 1, I'm like, because I already know how many days. But it used to be worse. Like our first screening, when we presented it to Sheila Nevins, and we cut back to the clock ticking. She's like, all right already. Like, we know he's gonna die, hurry it up. Because it was just so depressing. I had a screening with my friends and they're like, I don't want to party anymore, Gladys. Like, I don't want to do the cuffs when he was going into the ambulance.
She's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's just what it feels like. Every time that you see that.
It's probably protocol. They have to do
Yeah.
It is. It's just like sad. The guy can't walk, can't run away. He's not gonna do anything. It's just stupid.
I cut that scene.
Oh yeah, his son said
Your 8 wives are waiting for you. But he was a very interesting, charismatic character, and
I was interested as to which conflict he'd fought in, because I thought at one point he said the Second World War. Then just by basic maths, that could be right, surely.
it was filmed 2006.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I just watched War Torn. The same thing with he mentioned here is mentioned in that one, where they come back and they teach you how to kill every day, and they don't teach you how to turn it off afterwards. It's like the same
Oh
thing.
yeah, Jack Hall, when he was in Italy, I think, it was his job to kill at least one person a day. So he had killed, I can't even tell you how many people he killed, but like with knife, guns, and so how do you come back to Iowa when people anger you? You're just set up for...
Next, we end up watching one of the most fun documentaries, a lighthearted, great time that is always a talking point after people have seen it. And it's entitled Pumping Iron. Pumping Iron was made in the 70s, and it is about bodybuilders with the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger in his last run before he headed to Hollywood and became everything on the silver screen. Schwarzenegger is not the only star in the film. There's also Lou Ferrigno, who ended up playing the Hulk in the 80s. It is incredibly enjoyable. You see a lot into Arthur's world and this unique world of bodybuilding with like an eclectic set of characters, including a character from Brooklyn. For eating during this film, we brought out some greens along with some Brooklyn breaded chicken. And soon after that, we brought out the best that we could match, some hotel fried eggs and toast.
So when Arnold was running for governor, I had to balance Prison Terminal with something.
When he kissed that girl, he did a close up of her face, and she was just like,
Like taking photos and going, oh yes, yes.
Oiling themselves up and busting their pecs out.
And grunting.
Yeah.
We're taking a break next week. We're shooting our short film prologue. We are finishing up another short film by Ricky Rosario entitled A Boil is Luck, which is in color and sound right now. And we're going to have 2 short films for you from 401 Films in the near future. So check those out. Check our website. Check our social media. If you have questions or comments about the show, please send an email to info@forwindfilms.com. That's info@FOURWINDFILMS. Thank you for listening. Talk to you soon.